I have worked with now close to 400 of our congregations, of the 1,000, close to 40% of them over the past 40 years in one way or another about their fundraising. And now that includes, today it includes the big three in northern New Jersey, all of them. So all of you big three. And so it's been quite a fascinating journey to do that. And some of the observations I have made over the years are that, number one, our congregations raise pretty much what they deserve to raise, given what they do and how well they ask. Unitarian Universalists are among the least generous of people who give to churches, and they tend to dilute their gift by having a sense that they really are very generous people and they give to so many different causes. One context that's very helpful is to think about how do we make our generosity feel good to people? How do we reward people for being generous? Other religions, by and large, are much better at really honoring major donors, and that's often part of the package of things that people who have left other religions and come to us object to. Most major donors are not particularly demanding about how the money is spent. Giving is a feeling experience. It's emotional. It is not rational. Has anyone ever had the conversation which says it's fine to believe that and to act in that way so long as you're willing to pay the consequences? Mm-hmm. And the consequences are that you will always be that $30,000 short.
The person who's giving that huge donation may be giving percentage-wise of that person's income
Totally
a
true.
whole lot less than the person who is scraping together to make it by, and yet is giving a much greater percentage. And yeah, does it add to the coffers of the congregation as much? No, but it's more of a give in respect to what that person has. And I would feel even more comfortable if I know there's no way to determine what it is, but if we had some sort of emphasis on kind of giving you more of what you've got as opposed to giving more, period.
I think that the emphasis on equal generosity is critically important in every campaign. Most people are riding on the coattails of a very few. So you're worried about the transition time. Transition time is a perfect time during the interim time to start to have discussions about how important, in fact, is your mission. Because what we're really talking about here is if we have a mission and we believe in it, is that important enough to do some things that will make people uncomfortable so that we can follow that mission? And that doesn't just mean about money. In Summit, they have a very, what they will admit, is a grandiose strategic plan which has as one of its major components that they're going to change the world. And they have metrics, including how many people are going to show up to tutor. And my colleague stands up on Sunday morning and says, we said we were going to do this. We're 15 tutors short. We need to have them by the end of today. That's right in your face. And there's real discomfort about that. So it's not just about money, but the congregation decided to hold people's feet to the fire. And they've decided to do that about money in some ways too. Although Summit is much less shy about recognizing significant gifts. The largest annual gift there is $100,000 a year, and they're not shy about. And the second is $50,000 a year, and they're not shy about saying that and recognizing it. And they've been very successful, in fact, in getting that extra $30,000 and $40,000 a year. And they do it shamelessly, by some measures, by saying, there are people in this congregation who have the capacity to give that extra money. If we need $30,000 extra, we're going to get it by one $30,000 gift. And the rest of you need to fall in line and wake up. In Summit, there was a call to the congregation. We expect 100 of you to show up in the sanctuary on Tuesday night to be part of that vigil. We expect that. And names will be taken. I mean, the number will be there. And the metric will be recorded in the system. So all I'm saying is if you have a vision and you want to quantify it, it isn't just about money. You should get a superb interim minister because it will be a very attractive interim position, and it should be a great congregation for a new minister to come into. Those things are all there. But you don't want to be waiting around for through a two-year interim and waiting for someone, waiting for the next Moses to come in here and tell you where the promised land is. You know where it is. Frankly, I think one of the visions for next year's canvas has to be showing the financial strength of the congregation to the new ministers who might be coming to serve it. If you try to solve the problem of recognition or accountability, which is another way to put it, on the backs of major donors, instead of across the board and saying, what are we wanting to hold ourselves accountable for? Then you're liable to run into difficulty. That said, you've already gone out on the ledge with the Angel Society. The main thing about putting a group like that together that I think is important is that you gather them together. And standard nonprofit way of, if I had an Angel Society, like I had a President's Council at the UUA, I'd make sure that they came together once a year so we could hear what they thought about things. And I'd make sure that happened before the next canvas. A good time to gather your angels together is probably early January and bring them together and have them meet with the canvas team and the board and talk about what excites their generosity. Not you, but most UU churches, not necessarily you, I don't know how you've done this, focus on the lower quartiles and trying to get those numbers up, as opposed to focusing on the upper quartiles and trying to increase those. And no fundraiser, no professional fundraiser would do anything like that, and no nonprofit would do anything like that. You do have the capacity to get to know some group of people in any given year and to try and zero-base their giving in some ways, to ask them to rethink it. Yeah, how would we, and I've had conversations with people, I say, and what's the best way to honor you for this? And I don't mean necessarily a plaque, but how would you like to be recognized in some way? And some people say, oh my God, I don't want to be recognized at all. But often, what I've found works pretty consistently is saying, well, one of the things that would be great would be if you'd be willing to talk to someone else who might be considering giving at your level of generosity, if we come across someone like that. One of the big problems, not necessarily here, but among Unitarian Universalists is that someone gives $50,000 a year and they look around and they say, well, plenty of people here could afford, if not 50,000, 10,000. And I'm looking at the breakdown of these numbers, and everything tells me here I'm a chump. Because if I were to choose the midpoint and to give in at the midpoint, then I wouldn't be a chump. But so what is it that rewards me for not being there? And I think that part of the way we do that is to show that there's a community of the generous. And it's not just one community of the generous. To go back to your point, Sue, there are a group of people who are just generous. And maybe they don't have as much money as someone else does, but they give at a very, very high rate, a high proportion. And so the community of the generous needs to be celebrated. The trouble is, when you take any population of donors as a whole, they are not, as a whole, the community of the generous. They're the community of the participants. The community of the generous is a very rarefied group, and but it breaks down in different ways. So you've got a community of the generous who are willing to be in the Angel Society. You've got a community of the generous who say they're going to give 5% of their income. I mean, they can be self-identified. We give 5% of our income. That's a community of the generous. And that would be a very rarefied group of people in a Unitarian Universalist church. There are the group of people who constitute your top quartile. That's a community of the generous. And I believe, at least to the degree that you can bring those people together, you have much greater chance of having more people be generous.
How far from the top do you need to have that face-to-face in order?
First two quartiles are worth seeing face-to-face. In an ideal campaign, the Canvas co-chairs plus the board, possibly the board and finance committee, constitute the Canvas team. And if there are going to be any face-to-face visits, those are the people who are going to be doing that. And there's two things that it means. One, everyone on the board or in this group of people who are the insiders for the Canvas makes their pledge first, and they do what you're asking people to do. So if you're asking people to increase by 10%, there's nothing to substitute from someone coming to talk to you about this. And that's the other part of it. You have to know what you're asking for, and I'm not sure that that's been entirely clear, what you're asking people to do. And what works best is not a vague percentage, but an actual dollar amount. I think if you're going to go see somebody, you're looking for more than a 10% increase. You're going to have a bunch of people who are not really UUs, they're Charlies. Charlie's people.
And the challenge of the congregation
Yeah.
to make sure they transition into
Right. And that's why your long haul people thing is so, yeah. Well, part of the spring is about convincing those people that the best way to honor Charlie's ministry is to realize that you're one of the long haul people, that you're here, you're part of the church, and then it's partly your job to shape the next ministry. You've got this location that is a signboard for liberal religious values right here in Montclair. And one of the strengths is this location. That's one of the strengths you need to celebrate. You have this location. And you have the opportunity to be part of the larger community. I'm sure you are. Focusing on your major donors in a way that cultivates them and keeps that vital really involves organization, keeping track of things, records, making sure that that the minister is going out to lunch with major donors a couple times a year. Getting that on the schedule, making sure it happens. Because almost everyone in church life operates reactively. I know from working with many of the large churches, if they often say to me, what's one thing we can do that will ensure our cash flow improvement? Like, the one thing you can do is arrange for the minister to have lunch with your 10 major donors 4 times a year.